the experience there, first thing in the hospital, I kept trying to get him to latch on. He wouldn't latch. For like 24 hours, he wouldn't latch. Well, come to find out, the nurse is giving my kid Similac in the nursery, which is why he won't latch. Well, of course, you know, flipped out mom. I flipped out, went and regrouped with a friend of mine and worked it out and came back to it where he didn't leave my room for 3 days until we actually left the hospital. And he did latch on about 8 hours later, and we breastfed for 2 years.
With my first child, the hospital wanted to just put the baby in the nursery and give just one bottle so I could sleep, but I didn't allow it.
So what did you do?
I just kept her with me and nursed her and got little sleep.
My mom, she was always like, well, just give him a bottle of formula. That was her answer to everything, and I was pretty adamant that I wanted to breastfeed.
When I first had him, I told him that I was going to nurse him, and they put that down, and then he wasn't taken to it. Like, as soon as he came out, they were like, oh, let's have you nurse him right away, and I don't think any baby's ready to be nursed. As soon as you give birth, I think it's just too much. They tried giving him a bottle to eat, and I told them no. When he is hungry, he will eat.
With my first son, we got into the just one bottle cycle while we were still at the hospital. I didn't know what to do. He was crying every half an hour. And instead of being supportive, the hospital staff said, well, we can just give him a bottle. And that kind of started the cycle. And then having in-laws at the house, they wanted to feed him and spend time with him. And while they were doing that, I didn't realize that it was affecting my milk production. And we got into a struggle with trying to relactate, and it was very hard on me and depressing. I felt like a failure, and that I couldn't provide for my son like I was supposed to. But this one's been great. I learned from that lesson. You just keep trucking through whether you have the support or not. You have to be your biggest fan and know that what you're doing is the right thing.
The family to family in Carson City, the lady there helped me a lot. She, went over the benefits of breastfeeding. She helped with, because I would get engorged and sore and, cracked nipples and stuff at first. And she helped. She would give me some cream and some soothies and just a lot of support. Support was the main thing because the pain went away, but just the encouragement to keep going, and that helped a lot.
There was definitely an engorgement. It was like a shower every time I went to put on a bra or a t-shirt. It was like constant waterfall. I found with like a wet washcloth or warm or doing back and forth warm and cold helped relieve some of the pressure.
I either would nurse my daughter as soon as possible, or I would pump off until she could nurse, because I would get very engorged.
I got a breast pump from WIC, and I pumped milk, and then I froze it for a later time.
And I just actually kept nursing him as much as possible. That first month, every chance I got, he was nursing, and that helped get it into a cycle, kind of. Eventually it started slowing down, and then it got used to what he wanted, so it all went away after that.
How did you know baby was getting enough milk?
Because she had enough diapers.
The question of whether they get enough breast milk is really challenging, especially in the first couple weeks when you have natural self-doubt anyway. Counting the diapers lets you know that he's getting what he needs, even if you can't tell. And, bringing him to WIC, making sure he's gaining weight and not losing was very reassuring, to make sure that he was getting the nutrition that he needed, and that helped ease my mind.
And I usually just let him nurse as long as he wants to, because I usually figure when he's finished, then he'll stop. But if he's really hungry, I know he's really fussy or whiny and just wants to be fed. But usually, I just let him nurse as long as he wants, and then he's done.
When I first started breastfeeding, I was really uncomfortable feeding around other people. I would go, in another room or whatever, and still sometimes it's nice to get away and just have that private time with you and your baby, but it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that you have to go in the other room for. You can breastfeed without showing.
Trying to feed them in public is one of the biggest challenges. A lot of people don't accept it. I was in a restaurant, got some of the most dirtiest looks I've ever gotten in my life for trying to feed my children.
Breastfeeding in public is difficult for me, but for the most part, I think it's pretty easy.
I overcame it, actually. My mom, we went to the mall one time, and this person was just staring at me, and she's like, "What, have you not seen a boob before?" And because I could never cover up. Kirsten, when nurse, she had to see me, and so I would just wear shirts, nursing shirts or something, and nursed in public, and people would look at me, but like I said, she had to eat too.
Breastfeeding in public doesn't bother me one bit at all. I have a shawl in my diaper bag that I pull out when I need to, and sometimes I can tell that other people don't necessarily like being around it, but my attitude on that is that, we were made this way. Women were given mammary glands for a reason. It's completely natural.
I absolutely support breastfeeding in public. I was very nervous the very first time. I did it at my friend's house to start with, so that I could kind of get used to the feeling. But I think it's an amazing feeling, and I think the more that we do it, the more that it becomes the normal for people to see that. It kind of socializes to others that breastfeeding in public is not weird or bizarre or uncouth. It's not a taboo. So I think that the more that women do it, and the more comfortable you are with it, the more it will be accepted in our society.
I think I was shy at first, but it got easier. I'm not so shy anymore.
Breastfeeding in public, a lot of people really kind of look at me and are just like, what is she doing? When she was younger, it wasn't that bad, but now that she got older and she's a little bit bigger, it's more of a moving her around. And but if people don't, some people like to look at me and look at me funny and stuff. I just try to ignore them, because it's either, give her what she wants or she's going to throw a fit in the store.
If people aren't comfortable enough with my body, they're obviously not comfortable enough with themselves. They need to go on somewhere, not me or my child. I'm actually glad that there's a federal law that permits me to breastfeed anywhere, because my child deserves that.
Breastfeeding is a all the time commitment, so it can feel sometimes like you are tied down, or like you can't do anything without your baby because you are breastfeeding. I pump when I'm at work, and when I'm with her I breastfeed, but anytime I go anywhere else and I'm not at work and I don't have my baby with me, I have to pump. So it just means you have to prepare a little bit more than you normally would, and then it's not so bad. I still can go do sports, and I can go to parks, and then go outdoors and do a lot of fun things. I just have to plan for it.
I think one of the biggest one was when she had the flu, that I was able to feed them with, we just used a breast pump, and I was able to feed them and take care of them.
With 2 older boys, I definitely feel tied down when I'm breastfeeding, trying to get them out of stuff, and plus keep her and feeding, and it's tough some days.
The main obstacle that I encountered was the cluster feeding. This is my first child. I never dealt with any of it. Nobody's ever, explained it to me. They told me about it, but so whenever she was cluster feeding, I just had to mainly make sure that I had no plans for that day. I just sat on the couch and made all my meals and everything prepared before I had to sit down with her, because when she was cluster feeding, I couldn't do anything. I mean, I could barely go up and go get something to eat or without her freaking out.
With my second one I did, because with her I had to return to work at 6 weeks. And so by the time she was 9 months, she was weaning into more of a bottle, but she was breast milk in a bottle. So I would pump and take her breast milk.
Were you driving bus then?
Yeah.
So it was pretty hard to be able to take breaks, wasn't it? Or?
Yeah. I would go in between my routes and nurse her and pump off a bottle for her to have in between while I was driving.
I decided to wean my son a week before his first birthday, and the reason why is because he has teeth now. And yeah, they bite. I won't lie, yeah, they bite. You have to teach him not to. But I knew I'd be weaning him soon because I am pregnant.
Sometimes, you know, breastfeeding isn't always convenient, but it is always healthier for the baby. And to, you know, in a busy day when you know that your baby needs to eat, you stop and you take the time to just be with the baby and to sit down and to relax. And that has helped, you know, like to continue to do that through a busy day, because a lot of times we forget to sit down and just breathe. And then it's when you're busy, your baby's busy, and they don't get the time to just be with you and bond when you're busy going to the store and running errands and everything else. And that time to sit down and feed the baby it's good for you and them. And so, yeah, sometimes you feel restricted, like you can't do everything, you can't go out or whatever. But then there's breast pumps. You can breastfeed exclusively and still do everything you want to do. So it's just learning to use the breast pump and feeling comfortable with that, or feeling comfortable feeding in public, or whatever. But it pays off. It pays off.